Hey guys, apologies kind of always for being a bit late with this video. Unfortunately, the first drive I recorded in Livermore, I was using some experimental camera settings to try to make the visualizations look a bit better, but I ended up just recording my own stupid face for like half the video, which kills the overlay and makes it useless in my eyes, so I had to go back out and do it again. So, to begin with, I'll be showing some of those clips that were salvageable and talking a little bit about improvements I've noticed so far. Then a bit later, we'll get into the full Berkeley drive, going right into the narrow hills, which I assure you you're going to want to see. It was a very eventful drive indeed, where the beta struggled in a few places, but was very revealing, and there's also some noticeable improvements to go over as well. First thing that I think was a noticeable improvement is that the path prediction for other vehicles, while it does get better and better version by version, this version seems especially good at knowing what other vehicles are about to do. For example, right now with the stopped mail carrier truck, I know for a fact that older versions of the beta would have not waited for her to back up and instead would have tried to shoot that gap. So it seems like the predictions coming out of the neural network that we saw during AI Day are getting pretty good at predicting where the vehicle will be in the future instead of just reacting to what's in front of it at the time. And along with that is significantly improved creeping behavior and gap shooting through these unprotected turns. The beta is now creeping forward even while cross traffic is visible and proceeding with confidence well before the traffic has completely cleared our path, which is basically how you have to do it when there's heavier traffic. So it's really exciting to see, but also a little bit surprising that the beta seems to be getting more and more aggressive while they're releasing to more and more people. So be extra careful out there, folks. Another thing that is super exciting is that apparently Tesla have added a new voxel 3D bird's eye view output. Oh geez, what a tongue twister there. So the car is building a virtual three-dimensional environment as it's driving down the road, just like it was shown off during AI Day. And oh my goodness, just look at these screenshots. Big shout out to Rice Fry and Green the Only on Twitter for hacking into the mainframe to get us these images. I think this gives us a really exciting glimpse into the future of full self-driving visualizations, and I seriously cannot wait to see something like this on my instrument cluster. This addition basically allows it to almost mimic LiDAR and dodge objects it isn't able to label, like overhanging shrubbery or random objects in the road. Although it does appear to be working from some of my testing, sometimes it does control for the objects, like this giant fence in front of us, a bit late. So hoping to see some improvements to this in the future, and again, be extremely careful when testing this stuff out because your mileage may vary. And the last thing I want to point out before we get into the Berkeley drive is that it also seems to handle mistakes better, and that is something that seems to improve with every version. In this clip, the mistake was definitely on my end, because I kept changing the navigation route to try to get a harder and harder route, which first made it seem like it had to go straight, and then left through this light ahead, and then I changed it back to making it go straight again, which is a totally unfair situation for the beta, but I actually think it handled it like a champ here. It knows it's in the wrong lane for our new route, politely turns on the turn signal and squeezes into this gap, then proceeds just like a human would in this situation. Do you remember the days where the beta wouldn't cross over a solid white line? Pretty crazy how much improvement there's been. Alright guys, super excited to show you the full Berkeley drive, right after I tell you about this video's sponsor, which is private internet access. After doing a lot of research, PIA is my VPN of choice, and recommending their product is easy for me because it's something I used even before they decided to sponsor me. And taking a look at some of the comments on my last videos, seems like a lot of you guys use them and love them just as much, which is really awesome to see and I think says a ton about their product. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network and is basically a necessity at this point to protect yourself while you're online. When you're using private internet access, all your internet traffic goes through a secure tunnel which hides your IP address, encrypts your data, and even blocks trackers and malicious websites. This not only protects you by keeping your data secure from spammers and hackers, but can also allow you to watch geo-restricted content from all major streaming platforms, which is a feature I use every day. You can protect up to 10 devices at the same time on your membership, which is really cool because it means my wife gets to have all her devices protected as well, giving me more bang for my buck. And on top of all that, the main reason I recommend it is because of their proven track record of having a strict no-logging policy, which has been proven multiple times in court. They're also completely open source, meaning anyone can take a look under the hood to examine just how secure and private their service really is. And if you sign up with my special link, you can get 83% off and a 30-day money-back guarantee on your membership. And also get a free PIA antivirus if you sign up for the 3-year plan. Comes out to like $2.08 a month, which I think is a really great deal, and the antivirus being included for free is something only happening for Cyber Month, which ends on the 25th. So if you're looking to upgrade your VPN, or especially if you don't currently have one, please consider using my link. Thank you for the support, you guys, and thank you to Private Internet Access for being this video's sponsor. Alright, we are starting off this drive through Berkeley, more in the city part, and then we'll be navigating up into the hills where things get much tighter. And we're off. No real specific destinations I'm actually trying to get to. I'm just going to be randomly entering navigation points and going with whatever has the craziest route. That clunk you just heard was the brake pedal being pressed suddenly, and you'll probably hear it a few times throughout this video. Seems to happen when autopilot is a bit unsure and hits the brake pedal suddenly instead of gradually. Also, just as usual, I will be fast forwarding at 4x speed through the quote-unquote boring parts, but if you'd like to watch these parts play in real time, you can do so by watching this video back at quarter speed. And coming up here, we're approaching a rather confusing intersection. When I was in the car, I actually thought it stopped too early. I thought we were supposed to go to that next stop line, but maybe it's actually doing the right thing here. Actually, I don't know. It's a solid yellow line, so maybe oncoming traffic isn't allowed to turn left here. I don't know. I think it actually did probably stop too far back here, but this is a rather confusing intersection for sure. The light is now green, and we're staying pretty far back here. It's starting to slowly creep forward. There was a nice big gap here because the van across the way from us guy kind of fell asleep at the wheel there. But autopilot is handling this one pretty slowly so far. Then surprisingly makes a pretty aggressive move through this intersection. Although that was definitely fairly aggressive, and we did get honked at by a Prius, I don't think we made the Prius brake at all, and I think that was a perfectly fine Bay Area style maneuver. But again, I am very surprised that the beta is starting to do these things with wider release. Coming up here, we are supposed to be going straight ahead, but the path planner is like having a mental breakdown trying to figure out which lane to be in. Displays message saying it's trying to get away from cones. I didn't even see it visualize any cones. Almost goes into this left-hand turn lane, so yeah, not doing too well here. This is one of those instances where if I was just normally driving, I probably definitely would have taken over here. I don't like my car swerving all over the road, but I do think it's important to show you how the beta kind of reacts to some of its mistakes, and yeah, it's for science. We are now approaching a very busy roundabout. The configuration of this particular roundabout is also pretty confusing, but I think the behavior here is pretty incredible. If you look back just a couple of my videos that I released, you'll see the beta really struggling through intersections like this and waiting for a giant gap to open up before it's even comfortable inching forward. And here we are seeing something much different. Autopilot is slowly creeping forward here, almost the entire time, looking for a gap in traffic big enough to make this right-hand turn. This is very human-like, as you can see by the other cars around us doing the same thing, and is another pretty good example of path prediction for the other vehicles. Seemed like it wanted to go there for a second, but changed its mind, pulling out in front of the van who was making a right-hand turn and getting us through here very nicely indeed. Now, don't get me wrong, there were definitely a few times there was probably a big enough gap for us to fit into that I would have gone for if I was the one driving, but combining safety with aggression must be an extremely hard thing for the beta to learn how to do with other humans on the road. If you play 100% by the rules, you will never get along driving with other humans. I know people have big issues with statements like that, but it's reality. If I ever have any free time, I definitely plan on making a video on exactly that subject where I can talk more in depth. Another pretty rough intersection ahead with very low visibility from both sides. These are the kind of intersections I don't even like driving through because it requires me to creep out an uncomfortable amount to get any visibility of incoming traffic. The Beta does exactly this and starts slowly creeping into the intersection. Then something pretty interesting happens. I think it almost felt protected by these pedestrians crossing the street, and even though there was approaching cars, it continues through this intersection. You can see it had a little bit of trouble with the braking before that car came to a complete stop, but it did cross out in front of both of those cars where it obviously was visualizing them and did see them. Definitely a lot more confidence and aggression in this version. That has definitely been the pattern I've been noticing anyway. We have to turn left up here, but do encounter an approaching car. Autopilot doing okay through here, but I feel like we did cut that corner a little bit tight and got closer to that car than we needed to. As you can see, the roads are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Berkeley was definitely developed at a time where there weren't that many people here, and now that there's a ton of people, it's just madness through these hills. Really sharp corner here, but Autopilot makes it through here pretty smoothly, then also spots these pedestrians ahead and just goes very, very slowly around them. I do appreciate it slowing down, especially when there's pedestrians anywhere around in the scene. That is definitely a time where I think any amount of aggression is probably not okay. We're at the end of our navigation route here, just setting in a new one. My hope is that eventually the Beta acts almost like a limousine driver, where it's like comfortable but also kind of aggressive when it needs to be, but still smooth about it when it kind of makes those decisions. We'll have to see where it ends up. Here is yet another example of something like that I personally think is just fine, but the comment section seems to just go nuts. We actually never come to a full stop throughout this entire maneuver right here. The Beta just looks both ways, sees that it's clear, and then continues. I know people all over the world are watching these videos, and some are saying way too aggressive, and others are saying not nearly aggressive enough. It's kind of just hilarious. But for right now, the full self-driving Beta is definitely designed to work around the Bay Area, where this is completely, like, it's just the way people drive. Beta doing a fairly good job so far, though, through these really tight roads with a bunch of cars off to the side, and having to get close to a lot of things and figuring out what's moving and what's not. Also, a lot of really tight corners where we basically have to go, like, full lock on the steering wheel to get around them. Pedestrian getting into their car here. Autopilot does notice this and goes extremely slow around. Very nicely done. I'm actually really interested what you guys think about what the Beta is doing in the aggression. Is it fine? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Please let me know in the comment sections what you think, and maybe where you're from too. Now we have another pretty common Berkeley situation where we have a cyclist on the road. California law says you must give at least 3 feet of room to cyclists. So it seems like the Beta is trying it the hardest that it possibly can to do that, even going full into the oncoming lane with an approaching car straight ahead. But I think the path planning here was excellent. This is probably the exact line I would have taken. We now have a left-hand turn with another cyclist stopped off to the side of the road here. Autopilot does begin to proceed and then sees an incoming van and realizes it's not going to be able to squeeze between them, so waits this out. This was another really good example of other vehicle path planning where it realizes this before it happens. Really nice to see the Beta planning this far ahead instead of just trying to like go for it and getting stuck, which we probably would have seen in the past with a maneuver like this. We're pretty far over onto the left-hand side of the road here. I think it's because the cyclist is still really close to us from behind. Autopilot creeping a bit more forward, making sure that no incoming traffic is coming from either side, and then proceeds. I feel like I haven't been fast forwarding as much as I thought I was, because a lot of things happen in a pretty condensed area, but I'll just keep letting this play out. Pretty harsh and uncomfortable break for these pedestrians. That gentleman even turns around and is like, what the heck is this guy doing? I probably would have done the same thing. Like, on one hand, it's nice that Autopilot's being safe, but hopefully we see some improvements to the smoothness around stuff like that, instead of just a jab at the brakes. Reaching the end of the navigation route again, so just inputting another one in here, which has us leave this neighborhood and brings us to a different spot in Berkeley. The road that it's going to take us on is actually a fairly windy road. And I do get a lot of requests to go through roads similar to this, but to be honest, it seems like mostly my audience just wants to see intersections and like city traffic and stuff, because even the normal version of autopilot, like it could probably get through a road like this. You can see the beta does have to slow down through a lot of these corners to get around, but does a really nice job, and also actually avoiding some of the shrubbery off to the side here as well, moving ever so slightly into oncoming lanes. Coming up, we can see that autopilot is now trusting its vision way more than it's trusting the map. You can see this corner was very hard to see, and we kind of overshoot it ever so slightly because we were moving too fast into it. Before, it almost used to be the opposite, where like the turn would be up ahead, but because of the navigation path, it would slow down too early. But here it was exactly the opposite. It knew it had a corner coming up in so many feet, but since it couldn't see it, it went a little bit too fast through there, which I think is really interesting and shows you that it's really relying mostly on vision now for sure. Then coming up here, with the sun directly in our eyes, something actually rather interesting happens. Although it does seem to be displaying and visualizing all the cars in the intersection correctly, it straight up stops driving and tells me to take over, and when I try to re-engage, it's telling me that I have reduced front camera visibility. This is actually the very first time this has ever happened to me. I've seen that message with Navigate on Autopilot before, but never with the full self-driving beta. So rather interesting, especially considering on the visualization, it seemed to pick up incoming traffic from the left and the entire intersection pretty well. So I'm not sure what triggered that, and I actually wish I would have like hit a little dash cam thing so I could have reviewed the footage from inside the car to see what it looked like. That probably would have been a good thing to do that I'll try to remember to do next time. Besides that though, autopilot does generally feel pretty confident in areas like this, despite there being a lot of like cars and stuff around. Actually probably even driving a little bit faster than I would be through here. Like doesn't even hesitate with that incoming car or anything. We then have a vehicle who's backing out of their driveway ahead. Autopilot does notice this, realizes it can't fit through this gap, and then just kind of stays still. Folding the mirrors is not going to do much for you here, Autopilot. We are really lucky that this guy went so far out of his way to account for us, because we're kind of not off to the right very much, and that this other car waits for us. That would have been an excellent time to back up initially, so we could have been really polite to that first driver who was backing out of his driveway, but Autopilot does get rather lucky with the other drivers and makes it through. Another incoming car in a tight situation ahead where Autopilot has to get pretty uncomfortably close to this truck. The only way I feel comfortable letting the beta do crazy maneuvers like that is because I have a pretty firm grasp of the steering wheel the entire time, so if it goes anywhere outside of what I think is okay, it will immediately disengage. And I urge all the people beta testing to also do the same, and to always take over whenever you feel uncomfortable, because that's the data that Tesla needs. I just don't take over for these videos for science. In all seriousness though, please use the beta responsibly so that we can continue to be treated like adults by Tesla and have access to this non-nerfed version of the best driving neural network there is. Some nice path planning here where we're slowing down preemptively to get past this stopped car to our right and squeeze through. Approaching the end of our navigation here, that is just up to our left through this corner. But Autopilot does not like the slope of this turn and decides to ignore the navigation route and instead just continues forward on its path ahead. This was fine with me, way better than handing me back control, so I just let it happen, and let's see if it can reroute us to our destination again. Then something pretty wild happens. I'm not sure if this is a rare sight through Berkeley. I really don't drive through here very much, but there's a deer ahead, a wild deer. But if you go back, you can actually see that Autopilot visualized it for a frame or two at least, which I think is really amusing and pretty cool. Doing a nice job though, giving that pedestrian a lot of room, and going at a pretty appropriate speed for these conditions. We are coming up to a long sweeping corner with cones on the outside of the barrier, and I think Autopilot thinks it has to avoid a lot of these cones and not go anywhere near them, but going a little bit too far over our lane line for my liking. So that was an instance where Although it was going pretty slow and it probably could have dealt with oncoming traffic just fine, I wasn't going to wait and find out. I would rather just disengage and make sure that weird edge cases like that get sent back to Tesla so that it can be entered into the simulation for training. And after saying that sentence, I realized how close to living in the Matrix we actually are. I think Tesla's AI day really redefined what I thought was possible with just, you know, cameras and neural networks. It's really, really, really amazing stuff. So it's about now in the car that I realized that this final destination point is down somebody's private driveway. So these roads get pretty intense pretty quick, and it's also driving a little bit quicker than I would be. But hey, other self-driving cars, there's no way it would go anywhere near a road like this. I do have one last disengagement there where it was just getting a little bit too close to the bushes off to the left. I did not want any like branches touching my car or anything, so I did take over. And there's also a bunch of signs saying that I shouldn't be here, so I thought it was probably a pretty good time to take over and get out of here. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please like the video if you haven't done so already, and get subscribed if you like this kind of thing. Again, apologies, this one took a little bit longer to get out. Released at a weird time, like a Sunday night, so I didn't have my usual weekend time to get a video captured, and then I had, oh man, no excuses. I will try to get out videos quicker, but again, thank you guys so much for the support. You're amazing. Thanks again for watching. Bye.